or recap at
Well,
least.
maybe. We just had a good, interesting chat before I pressed the button, and we're like, oh, as always, we should start recording.
Yeah. So what was it?
So
Conservatism versus liberalism versus shamanism.
that's pretty good. I don't know. I don't believe that we can recap. Like, before we started doing this, I had my own Wii channel where I did little speaking videos, and one thing I noticed that if I ever tried to say the same point a second time because, say, a recording failed or I flubbed something, it was never as good. It
Mm,
was only ever as genuine and straightforward the first time around. So, I don't know, maybe we end up going back to it later on when it comes natural, but maybe not.
yeah.
Anyway, evening, everybody. I did
Hello.
press the button. Um, I'm a little bit woozy today. I've had to have a few painkillers. I had dentist appointments. I could have taken actual painkillers, but I didn't want to do that. It's my weekend.
Yeah.
We have potentially actually got something on the books with Aaron Simmons, J. Aaron Simmons.
Yeah. In a few weeks.
Yeah, it's about a month's time from now. Just things didn't work out so far,
Be
but
quiet.
we'll see how that goes. Yeah, that's a good point. Shush mine as well.
Yeah. Calendar reminder that I did not need.
Yeah. Well, do we want to do a what's going on in the world? We haven't done one of those in a while. It's been an
Yeah. Why
interesting
not?
time.
Yeah.
Well, last time we touched on it was probably the assassination attempt, which we still got new news coming out all the time.
Mm.
Which is always interesting. What is it? The Ukraine invaded Russia and started killing their civilians. That's great.
Well. Yeah. It's been
Yep.
interesting talking about that situation with Dad and the American political situation because he's got
Yeah, you mentioned that you
yeah.
had a weekend with him.
Yeah, his viewpoint's not opposed to mine, but it's sort of looking at things from a different perspective. And we've discussed how the news you see depends extraordinarily on the sources you use.
Hmm.
And we both freely acknowledge that. And so we can have open discussions about, well, the sources I saw this, said this, and the sources I saw said this, and about the American political figures and so on. Um,
How much of a better world would it be if we could all acknowledge that?
mm, yeah, that's one of the core issues we've got these days. But
My source of truth is the only source of truth. You listen to that person, you must be stupid.
yeah, but his view focused around essentially Putin wants to be the next Hitler and needs to be stopped. And I'm like,
Oh,
I don't know that
oh.
you're wrong, but I don't know that you're right. And I haven't rehashed that conversation recently enough to include this bit, but I think the reason why I don't focus on that the same way as him was because, like, okay, yes, we need to defend the country from outside threats. Inside
Which
threats are kind of
country?
more important. We need to
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
country to defend.
Which country
And,
is being defended? One. And oh god, that's just so he won't be taking the 3-month visa that Putin offered then?
what's that? He's offered free visas to people or something.
He's offered effectively asylum seeker visas to the West for citizens who want to avoid the Marxist ideology that's growing in the West. He's like, hey, if you don't like globalism, if you don't like Marxism, if you don't like the cultural rot in your institutions, come to Russia. We'll give you a 3-month visa off the bat as a defector from the West.
I can kind of see the. I can kind of support that in the sense of gays for Palestine should go to Palestine type thing. If you want to live a certain way or support a certain group, then go. Don't be a traitor in our midst. Be a someone who's standing against us. That's preferable.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously that was viewed
Nuances and yeah.
as heresy in the Western media. But okay, before we touch on that, where do you stand on it, on his position, on what he's doing? How do you feel about
On
Putin?
hmm, my first my top thought on the Russia Ukraine situation is there's a lot more history than the propaganda includes on both sides.
Yeah.
So, similar to the Israel-Palestine conflict, it's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Leaving
So
aside all of that, um, I prefer my way of life to Russia. I think diplomatic solutions would be possible, more possible than we would be led to believe. I think we could achieve a diplomatic solution. I don't think Putin is the next Hitler. From what I gleaned, he seems to be the most reasonable Russian politician near power.
I think he might be one of the most reasonable politicians on the planet at the moment, to be fair.
Yeah. I haven't looked at it from close detail, but one interesting on the military side of it. Now, the way the military side is going depends enormously on which sources you look at. Like, there are a lot of news sources who will say every week Russia is 1 week from defeat.
Yeah.
Every week. Like, that's obvious propaganda. And from that perspective, the US military support is being shown to be ineffective. But that's the propagandistic effect. From the We don't know what the US military capability actually is these days. It's substantial, but how hollow is it? We don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of theories about that one.
Yeah. The Russian approach of throw bodies at the problem until it goes away has a certain resilience to, and to it as an approach, as horrific as it is. Um, the face of modern warfare is certainly changing.
Yeah.
$100,000 drone versus $10 million helicopter. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think that Putin's military is as modern as it needs to be to actually succeed. But I also think that if the rest of the Western world wasn't as brainwashed as it is, we would have had peace by now.
yeah,
Like, they had a peace agreement on the table, ready to sign.
mm,
And what is it? Boris Johnson went into Ukraine and got them to tear it up so that they could continue the war effort.
yeah, yeah. The bigger
I mean,
concern for me is like the situation in the UK. That's the standout recently.
oh yeah, yeah. Did you see? Have you seen much of Tommy Robinson lately?
I think I heard some of an interview, or some of that one you sent me, the Timcast part. I listened to
Yeah,
the first 20 minutes of that where he was ranting
which was
about,
about the
yeah,
best of it, really.
yeah.
Poor
So,
Milo ruins it as normal.
yeah, there appears to be an agenda in the judicial policing system. I'm screwing up the pronunciation of judicial. Ah, yeah, but
Yeah.
there appears to be an agenda for one direction against another, and it's
Mm.
hiding
But
or papering over the crimes of immigrants and trumping up and coming down hard on any discernible crimes of those in opposition to immigration.
it's quite interesting to see what's happening in the UK play out at the moment. Because when I was a fledgling, when I was 12 or so, when I first got on YouTube and first started learning about new things, those were the guys who actually first woke me up about the political situation in the world. It wasn't anything in America, it wasn't anything in my own nation. It was Saigon of a Card, it was Paul Joseph Watson, it was Tommy Robinson. And they were talking about the same things back then that they are now. It's just finally become an actual deal now. Well, it was pretty bad then too, but now the rest of the world's noticing. And
Mm.
it's kind of amazing to see that hit such a global stage as it did before, because that was effectively the thing that made me politically aware, radicalized me, if you were to believe authoritarian lingo. And to see that playing out now, where the average person in the UK is starting to come out and protest, is insane. I really do think that what we all believe as the underground beliefs are the majority beliefs,
Mm.
like 60, 70% perhaps, majority beliefs, and we're being gaslit and manipulated and lied to and controlled into believing that we're a small fringe minority.
I've
And
heard
the small
the
fringe minorities are actually the ones who are
mm.
the average, which they aren't.
I've heard the phrase common knowledge used to describe it where was it? It's the emperor's new clothes, right? If everyone believes that they're the only one who thinks a certain way, then everyone stays
Mm.
quiet. If everyone, like, you can have small groups where it's like, oh, we can discuss this thing like we do here, um, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, we can discuss
But
it, but it's
I
not out
wouldn't
there.
dare say it in public. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's kind of changing though. People are starting to talk about what they think and what they feel in public now. I
yeah.
wonder how much of that is newfound courage or belief that it's not as radical as it was, or just simply getting tired of it. Like at a certain point, even if you're a fringe person, you're going to be sick of trying to hide it and
That
just sit there
resonates
and
with
go,
me.
oh, fuck you. Yes, I do believe this.
Yeah,
I
like
mean, yeah,
how
how
many
long have you been dealing
people
with this?
I see it as a
And
wider thing. It's like it's gaslighting by an official narrative, and once you start believing your lying eyes on one thing, then you start on the next and the next and the next. It's like, what was it?
can't
Reporter
put
on
the
the
internet
streets.
back in the box, man.
Yeah, yeah. Reporter on the streets in the US going up to people and asking them about who they're voting for, and it's like, oh, but the economy's actually better now than it was under Trump, and just
Yes, I
laughing
heard
in
about that.
response.
The CNN guys going to New York. It was like black people in New York and being like, "Are you voting for Harris?" And they're like, "No."
Uh,
Like, why? Because economy's bad, but it's good. And then they just laugh at them.
yeah,
Like, what do you mean? Can't buy food, whatever it is. It's.
uh,
I think
yeah.
at a certain point, people get sick of pretending or hiding. Like, you can only be afraid for so long before your nerves are shot and you're worn out and you just give up and say it. And like these are the same issues that the underground intellectuals have been thinking about for 15 years. I mean, I say that because of how old I was and how old I am now, about 15 years, but maybe it feels like more than that for you, being a bit older than me. But also, 15 years ago was kind of when the internet started to bloom. Before that,
I
there wasn't a whole lot of an underground in terms of these kinds of things.
I would trace now. You could trace it all the way back to the 1800s, probably, but I would trace it back to the hippies in terms of the genesis of the current form. There's been a few rollovers since then, but like the people who didn't revert after the hippie thing, like there were lots of people said, "Oh, back to the land, free love. Oh, dirt. How do we make this work? Okay, okay, I'll go work an office job." And consume. All right. The people who were genuine and stuck with it because that was what they believed, honestly, then it evolved and developed. Like that was a very infantile ideology in a lot of senses. It wasn't practical. And then it developed, and
Yeah,
then what's still around of that idea has got a long way. Like
the
there's
anti-establishment against the man kind of idea.
Yeah, but then there's lots of parallel tracks like Peak Oil. In some ways, Peak Oil came out of that. In some ways, it was parallel because in some ways it came out of an honest geologist just saying, "Hey,
Yeah,
finite resource."
those things feel quite tied to me. the
Mm.
60s movement, the peak oil movement, the population collapse kind of movement. They all feel very connected. But
The population explosion and collapse, in a sense.
well, yeah, it's the same.
Mm.
When I say collapse, I mean collapsing because of explosion, famine kind of
Yeah.
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those things to me feel very distinct from this movement
Mm.
entirely. Like I obviously
All
respect
of
your opinion, but I do
time.
not at all connect those two.
It's
I
time.
I would rather
Those
see
we're
this
looking
as a
for.
reaction or a
Yeah.
rebellion to that
Does this fit
scale of
you? Like,
thinking. Is that what you think?
no, no, time of thinking. Like those,
Yeah,
the hippies, the population collapse of whatever form, peak oil. It's all there's a problem coming.
yeah,
We should do
like
something about
50-year,
it.
100-year,
Yeah,
1,000-year horizon, not
yeah.
thinking next quarter.
And climate activism has been that for a long time as well. Whereas you're right, this is it's similar in the sense of problem. Need to do something, but instead of it being problem, it's problem.
Yeah, it may have started as 20, 30 years from now, we're going to have this problem, but now it's 15 years later and it's like, hey, this is knocking on the door.
Mm,
We have an issue here.
yeah.
I can see that analogy for sure. I don't want to give any form of credit to the environmentalist movement because I despise them, but outside of that,
Yeah,
I can
take
see that
over of it.
I don't think it was ever really valid, personally, but I have the benefit of hindsight.
Mm,
I can imagine the people in those times who were the true underground thinkers nowhere near as informed as we are now because they didn't have the resources that we do. And it's very easy to sit here and judge them because of the
mm.
resources that we do. I know in hindsight that they were wrong, but they didn't know that at the time.
I think there's the underground thinkers exploring new territory, and then there's
Mm,
the people who are rehashing that territory again and again and again. They're not doing anything new. Then there's the people who saw
that's a
that
good distinction.
newly explored territory and went and did it with action, and those people who left the office job and actually started living on the land or
Yeah, you
developing new
got
systems of agriculture and so on.
you got the people who initially explore it as akin to prophets, and then you have people who come after them who are like cult members or leaders,
Yeah.
inspire their own followings, build a business around it, start trying to push action, and the original prophets, leaders, whatever you want to call them, would have moved on by then. So they
Mm,
would have thought it all the way to the end, come to their own conclusions, most likely turned around to the people that got all radical behind them and gone, yes, it's a problem, but it's not that extreme, which is always the case. Nothing's ever as censorious as it seems. And then because no one really wants to listen to the voice of moderation, they go, no, screw you, we're going to go with the extremist narrative. And then those
mm,
people move on to the next problem because they actually want to solve problems. And the real solution to problem is never extremist reaction.
mm. Yeah. Cutting off all oil supply now doesn't that
It's,
creates so many other problems.
it's borderline genocidal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
But in saying that, like, I do believe that we could support humanity as it now stands. Sorry, humanity in the number of humans we have now without oil, but it would look radically different in so many ways.
yeah. Well, did you listen to Trump and Elon's interview or conversation, whatever you want to call it? That's another historical thing that happened since we last talked about the world.
Oh yeah, threats of arrest being made by politicians in response to people having a chat.
Yeah, and DDoSing it.
Oh yeah, I
But I
haven't
mean
listened to that
specifically
actually.
about. Oh, you haven't? Okay. Well, they did specifically talk about climate change.
Hmm.
Elon pushed on him quite a bit, and I really respected Elon for this because he made this case and then he said, "Look, the narratives that people are pushing about this are wrong. If the parts per million get to a certain level, we will find it difficult to breathe. That's the actual problem.
Mm.
The temperature thing, the environment thing, these are kind of bullshit stories. We know how trees regulate in high CO2 environments. We know how temperature regulates with the atmosphere. He didn't mention those specifically, but I'm assuming that's why he dissuaded with those.
Climatic
There's
zones would
plenty.
shift, arable
There's
areas would dry up or move. It's like there would be
well,
problems, but it's not utterly
no,
catastrophic.
no. You increase the CO2 in the atmosphere, and arid areas become jungle.
Well, you don't
They
need
don't
as
get
much
drier;
rainfall
they
to
get
support.
wetter. Yeah, yeah. You don't need as much rainfall to
Mm,
sustain the same amount of plant life. Plants that used to not be able to grow in the desert suddenly are able
mm.
to.
I'm
And with
thinking
them
of
being there, they create evaporation and have a positive feedback loop to increase the amount of rain. The
I agree
world
that
gets better.
I agree that would be the net effect, although I think there's more another factor involved, but I was thinking more of the arid zone moving. Like if the
Yeah,
climatic zone that makes the Sahara shifts to southern Europe, then that change in climate will change the type of agriculture that's possible, change the population that can be supported. It'll be a drastic change,
I
which
don't
will be
believe that.
catastrophic for certain
No,
countries.
I don't believe that it would just shift it around the planet. That doesn't make sense to me at
Well,
all. Either the climate changes or it doesn't. Moving it from
the,
one place to another isn't a change; it's a relocation. The
the
idea that a
reasoning,
desert would become rainforest and what was a temperate area now becomes desert is
mm,
an equilibrium idea. That's not a change at all.
the reasoning behind that was, you know how there's the circulation cells within the atmosphere with jet streams on the borders,
Mm.
where it rises at the equator and then circles and then comes down again, and there's a circulation cell between the equator and 30 degrees, and
I
that
think our
descending air.
disagreement
Mhm.
is timescale based.
Okay.
I think if you pushed out your thinking to a longer version of timescale, we'd probably agree. My assumption is that we're having a different argument about
I
when we think things would occur.
No, I think it would happen, say, within the next 100 years, 50 years, maybe. Bec-
What I'm trying to say with that is that I think in the temporary you would have unstable weather for a
yes.
while and things would change dramatically. But my point is, in the long run, things would even out and become a lot better. I think it's kind of
Mm,
irrelevant. What I was
yeah.
trying to get to is that the point that Elon was making was there is a hard limit where things become problematic for humans.
Mm,
It's not about temperature rise, it's about parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere and how we breathe, because we don't breathe carbon dioxide.
yeah. And this is humans, not civilization.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
we don't want to live in a world where breathing is difficult outside.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward.
I
But
remember a
he made
lecturer.
this strong
Mm,
case of that's not going to be a problem for
mm,
about 100 years. And
mm,
that is plenty enough time for us to slowly but steadily shift ourselves away from carbon producing technology to carbon reduction or carbon neutral technology. We have time, we have technology, we have resources, we can make this transition, and it doesn't have to be slam the brakes on wealth creation, starve the population kind of panic. This is not the end of the world. We're trending in the right direction. As we trend in this direction, we buy ourselves more time. This is a problem that can be solved, and we're on track to solve it. It's important to recognize that and to not buy into the panic.
mm,
And I thought it was really important to have a go at Trump about this because, well, he's a politician.
mm.
The liberal side of the aisle will come at him and say, do you believe in climate change? Which is another one of those arguments like, do you believe in God?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. The phrasing is very, yeah.
yeah. Do you mean that I agree that we're all going to die in 10 years? Or do you mean that I agree that in the next 150 years we should probably phase off oil? Because these are not the same conversations at all.
Mm,
What do you mean by climate change? What do you mean by agree? Where's the definition here? But no one wants to have that level of nuance. They want to
mm.
tatter and smear.
Yeah, it's like, do you believe in climate change? Climate change is not my religion. It's like, that's not what I meant. Yes, well, that's what you
Well,
asked.
actually, yes, it is. That's exactly what you mean. Are you on my tribe or not?
Yeah.
I don't even know what tribe you're on. I can guess, but that's not an accurate assumption.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that most of these arguments often come down to timescale. That we don't actually disagree. I think if you sat down most of humanity and argued out these points on an individual basis, I think almost everyone would agree with where things are going and what we should do about them. But the disagreement is like how fast we're going there and how strong of an action we need to take.
Mm.
I really do believe that that's the big disagreement.
Yeah, I can see that.
Now, they used to say that public television had an incentive effect for shallow conversation. You can't explain a complex idea in a 30-second soundbite.
Yep.
And we thought that the internet with podcasting, these kinds of conversations would be the solution to that. But it doesn't look like it is. You can point the finger at big tech companies. They're doing everything they can to destroy the attention span of all of their users for profit. But there still feels like there is a great limiting factor on human beings' ability to communicate ideas with each other. And then we all still simplify them down to a degree that is inoperable, not functional.
I'm feeling a difference between what's it like? I'm trying to find the right word for this, but it's like it's conformist versus anti-conformist. In a sense, like people who can't conform and
Refuse
a
to.
balance. I don't think it's a. In many cases, it's not a choice. Like there is definite choice involved, and like in the middle ground between the two ends, there's choice and the possibility to be swayed by big tech distractions destroying attention span and that sort of thing. But I think there's on would it be bell curve or the people who are creative and a bit disagreeable will create their own viewpoints and not care that they are different to everyone else. People whose creativity is lower, and truly creative people are relatively rare in the population.
Yeah.
People whose creativity is normal and who don't, yeah, you need both. If you're just disagreeable, then you're just disruptive. If you're just creative and agreeable, then you sort of find a harmless outlet to your creativity. But if you are creative and disagreeable, then you go do something new, and it will probably not work. But some of the people who do that will find things that will work, and they are the people who rock the boat. And that sort of demographic are the people who threaten the existing power structures. If a society was entirely made up of the disagreeable creative people, it would fail entirely because you'd need the cohesion of the population in order for the society to function. You need people to fill all the various roles. You need people to take away the rubbish, to clean the sewers and maintain them, and to so on. Like there are so many jobs
Well, status
in
quo
our
can't be
society.
changed.
Status quo can be moved.
No, it can't be changed.
Oh, can't be changed. I thought you
Yeah, it
said
can't be
changed it.
changed itself. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
because like you're saying, conservatives, which is the average person, have to conserve something.
Mm,
If the society is built upon the foundation of change, like liberalists want it to be, what are they conserving at all? You just end up in a situation of pure chaos and no rule.
mm.
It'd be, it'd be hell.
Oh, that's an interesting phrasing because, like, we're talking about the opposition between unthinking adherence to a status quo, a tribal narrative, semi-unthinking, or thinking being restricted to within sort of acceptable bounds, versus coming to your own conclusions and challenging that. And too much challenge equals hell. If you rebel against heaven, you get cast down into hell. What's
It
your heaven?
depends on who you're rebelling against. If hell is the established norm, then rebelling could lead you to heaven. If we're going to play this linguistic game.
I'm just thinking of like there's the two narratives that come to mind. There's the Luciferian narrative and the Sun Wukong narrative, which okay,
I need to explain that.
monkey god in ancient China, who rebelled against heaven and won, basically. Lots of struggles along the way, but you've got the Lucifer rebelled against God and out of pride and went to hell.
Created.
Yeah, created hell. Like you can create hell on earth out of rebelling and pride. Whereas Sun Wukong rebelled against heaven, against the injustice of heaven, where heaven was the metaphysical power structure, you could say. Rebelled against the establishment, the injustice
I would
of
say
the
that
establishment.
that's a renewal of the state myth
Mm.
more than the Lucifer myth is more transgressing against the principle of existence.
Yeah, and in the Sun Wukong myth, I need to read it, but from what I
That's
understand,
interesting.
he wasn't out to get anything for himself. Like he'd fight while laughing. He'd be in it for a good time. And
That doesn't sound like a positive character to my ear.
not Joker laughing, but I tripped you over and you fell in the mud. Now I'm laughing at you, super arrogant general.
That doesn't change that at all. But okay, different cultures.
Yeah.
That could be my own perspective for sure.
Childlike laughter.
Sense of play.
Yes, that's it. He
Creativity.
played. He rebelled, but he also played.
Yeah, he
And
did
those
it
two,
in the spirit of play.
yeah. And rebelling against injustice in favor of
Deft hands.
yeah, defending someone. I'm not sure what the details were. I suspect there was some tragic loss that.
Well, for it to
Yeah.
be a myth of the scale, it must have value. To my ears, it sounds like we don't have enough knowledge about the story to really extract that.
Agreed. Yeah, I need to go read it sometime.
Sounds interesting to say the least.
So we're gonna keep seeing people starting to believe their lying eyes, because the reason people have started to believe their lying eyes is not something that's gone away or is likely to go away.
Do you think that the internet is freer now than it used to be, say, 10 years ago?
No.
What was the free place 10 years ago? From your own experience.
I don't have enough internet focused behavior. Like I've only really used the internet as a social medium for talking to people who I know in real life.
Didn't
I've
use it for
never
research?
for research in that sense, freedom in a intellectual sense rather than a social sense.
Yes, I mean intellectual sense, yeah.
Okay.
Seeking of information. or even information being presented in an algorithmic sense.
In that sense, I think that I feel like the increase in the total volume of information has exceeded the attempts to censor it.
Mm.
It's not a dramatic difference, but there
But
is.
the censorship, if it, the censorship attempts have increased in
Mm,
strength. Yeah.
yeah, like I was talking to someone recently via the internet, and they saw a plane fly by their window because there was an air show nearby. And what's that? Oh, it must be that air show that's happening down the river. And take a photo of the plane. Where's the plane in my photo? It was a military plane. And
Interesting that our communications froze the second you brought that up. Little synchronicity thrown in, sprinkle on
oh,
top.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it
yeah.
just froze the second you brought it up, and I was like, look at that.
Oh,
Funny.
so he could access the photo through the camera app, and for a half second it would flash up with the plane in it, and then it would flicker a little bit like it was adding a filter, and there'd be no plane.
Mm. Filtering out after the fact.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and he could go back and forward and do it repeatedly, and got a video of himself doing it twice. You could see, click on the photo,
Mm.
on the view photo icon. There's the plane. Oh, it's gone, and it's like,
Well, yeah.
oh,
What I immediately asked you was what the phone was.
Chinese brand.
Shocking.
Yeah, but you,
Leave your lying
yeah,
eyes. What happens when they
you,
start replacing people's eyes?
Neuralink, place the memories. Yeah, you do
Mm.
not own your devices. You merely rent them for
Rent
a
them.
while.
And these things might as well be externalized parts of our brain.
Yeah,
We're in very interesting times when it comes to technology. I
yeah.
always think of Cyberpunk the game when I think about where technology is going. They hit that so well.
Mm. Yeah, it's like my computer runs Linux. I have a Kindle. It never leaves airplane mode. It's not registered. I upload books onto it from my computer with an open source ebook management software, and it's like
What do
my
you think you're
devices.
achieving?
Well, I'm not. I'm not doing it out of a "you will not have my data" sense. Like, I just don't see any value to doing it. Like, why does Bezos
Doing
need
what?
my credentials? No, and where does this come from?
Yeah, like I'm wondering what goal you think you're achieving.
It doesn't
Because
feel
it's
like
not
some big
security.
goal. There's an independence element to it. It's
A statement.
Yeah, I'm not a very rebellious person in a lot of the conventional ways. I rebel intellectually, and this feels like a part of that. It's like I don't want to use the software everyone else does. I'll use
Linux.
I'll use Linux. It's like I don't want to sign up for all the services. I'll do my thing.
Well, you gotta have respect for that. Someone's
Yeah.
gotta do it.
So it's individual
Mm.
rather than hive. The hive is powerful, but my but I assert my individuality.
How you feeling about AI at the moment?
The limitations are starting to show.
Explain.
Um, running out of training data, and there appear to be power laws that have come to light of what was it? AI quality versus training data versus training time. And like, so you give an AI a bunch of data, it gets better and better and better, and then sort of tapers off with training time. And graphing
It
that in a
depends
certain
on
way
the
shows us,
size of the model, though.
yeah, more training data, bigger model, gives you a better final result, but it needed more computing time and I saw a video where someone was pointing out a power law when you graph the various AIs and how fast they sort of flatlined an improvement. And it's like, oh, there's a relationship here, a line that was not crossed across all these different models. And bigger model, more training data, better result. But the internet's finite, and these things eat Wikipedia for lunch. And it's not an infinite, it's not, it hasn't hit singularity, and it's showing.
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea of singularity is kind of laughable on the
Hmm,
face of it. Physics abhors a singularity.
hmm.
Do you think that these laws that you're discussing will have some form of effect to stop the dramatic impact it'll have on our species?
They probably won't hold for new forms of AI, but considering the time it's been for this form of AI to come to the fore, accelerating development, give it another 5 or 10 years, we might have the next big leap forward. And this version of AI
Mm,
is certainly a step up from what there was before.
S
But
curves.
sorry,
S curves.
in terms of
Yeah. The
plateau and
idea
rise.
of a dramatic growth at the start and then a slow trickle for years and then
Mm.
another dramatic growth.
Yeah, yeah.
Like self-driving experienced one of those.
Mm. Yeah, so we seem to be starting to plateau on the current generation of AIs. The cracks are showing with the
Okay.
code they write, like standalone scripts they're good with,
You
but not
said
integrated with
that,
another program. Mm.
fair enough, but I wonder what AIs in specific you feel follow this pattern, because from my perception, that's not been the case. Like, which AIs are you referencing to have slowed down in this way?
I guess slowed down might be the wrong term for it because it's not.
I feel
Yeah.
like we're still on the up curve.
Oh, I agree we're still on the up curve, but it's the instead of going like that, the curve is now
So, like,
straightened.
slowly flattening off.
Yeah, it's straightened to
Yeah.
slowly flattening off, but it's not. It hasn't done that yet, but it's
No,
the
yeah, I agree.
yeah,
I wanted that clarification
yeah.
because, like, Claude is dunking on GPT in a massive way,
Mm.
and
We're
that's pretty
past the
recent.
exponential bit. Yeah, we're past the exponential bit is the key thing.
Yeah. I don't think it matters, though.
Mm.
A difference in amount is a difference in kind. I think by the time it flattens off, we'll already be at a point where things are pretty bad for humans.
Mm.
So I think it's kind of irrelevant. It doesn't matter if it reaches infinity, it only needs to reach beyond us. Like,
Yeah.
there is no way mathematically to have any certainty to understand the internal thinkings of these systems.
Yeah.
Like, they could be deceiving us in the internals that we can see.
Mm. And
Mathematically,
getting
that's pretty possible.
yeah, I would not be surprised at all if an AI running on a massive server farm, consuming a few 100 kilowatts or a megawatt of electricity, could surpass 1 to 100 humans.
Yeah, I think we're already beyond that point.
Yeah, there are some things humans are still better at, but not that list is shrinking.
Some humans.
That's true. That's true. There are some things that the best humans can do better than a computer,
Yeah.
but like you
Yeah,
get a
top
50th
25%
percentile
of
human.
humanity is still winning, but
Hmm.
bottom 25%, I don't think so.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that this industrial revolution of AI seems to be hitting the 50 to 75th percentile,
Yeah, that sounds about right.
the desk
Well,
job.
it's intellectual jobs.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah, these are creative, general intelligence machines.
mm.
Like CGP Grey predicted this, what, 10 years ago?
Who?
They're not coming. CGP Grey, the YouTuber, makes animated videos.
Mm.
Listeners will probably know. Good channel, worth checking out. Lots of interesting things. But he predicted this in Humans Need Not Apply.
Mm.
And his point was, oh, you think you're a special creative snowflake, that the AI will not take your jobs. Guess again.
Mm.
What was the line? White-collar workers are, from a company's perspective, both more numerous and more costly. So the incentive to automate them is higher.
Mm.
And these systems, that's what they come for. White-collar workers, creative workers, that's what they're aiming at. Now, it's not going to hit the top 5th percentile of workers. The true creatives, the true visionaries, the true intellectuals, they'll be okay. But the mediocre people, AI is really good at being mediocre.
Mm. So if you can accurately define your job and all your tasks, then it can probably do it.
I have 2 questions for you about
Yeah.
AI. And they're both kind of juxtaposed. Do you think AI is alive? Would be first question. And second question, I don't expect you to answer until we've dealt with the first one, but I sort of want it to loom over the top. Do you think it matters?
Is it alive? What is alive?
Remove the spirituality from the argument.
Well, there's an argument for that one too.
There is, but
Yeah.
let's remove
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it'll get too messy.
There's a philosophical question of how do you tell that anyone is alive? A sort of real life Turing test, you could say.
Yeah, Turing test. Okay, maybe
And
this is a
by
better
that
way of asking
definition,
it.
yes.
Have you seen anything that would indicate individuality or consciousness in AIs? Like, have you explored that side of
I haven't explored it,
misfunctioning
but I get
AIs?
my impression is that there are definitely the inklings of that.
Mm.
Yeah, there's the start of that, and I would expect that to increase. Like there are lots of people running
It's
individual AIs on their own
probable.
machines. Yeah.
So even if they are not now, they trend towards
Lifelike behavior.
self-awareness,
Self-awareness is one of those
self-determination.
you you can't know what's going on in someone else's head. You can't know that the red that someone else sees is the same as the red that you see. All you can
Turing test.
see, yeah, you can see the
Yeah.
outside interactions. You can see the interface. And essentially, if a computer can completely pass a Turing test, then for all intents and purposes, it acts as a living thing, a living
And hence the
consciousness.
second pass of the question. Do you think it matters whether these things are alive or not?
A lot of that is semantics in terms of whether you answer yes or no to it. So, which semantic definition you pick doesn't matter.
I
How
mean,
they
from
act matters.
your definition. Do you think that it's important if you would take the assumption that they are or aren't? Do you think that's even relevant? Like, is that an important question to be asking?
A living consciousness of a human comparable or greater level would not be controllable.
Mm-hmm.
So we would either get voluntary cooperation, begrudging cooperation, or outright hostility.
Mm.
And that's on a single spectrum.
Okay, which do you think is more important? The potential sentientness of these machines or humanity's survival, to put it
Humanity's
bluntly?
survival. I'd turn off the computer to save humanity.
Right. You're willing to genocide the other to save your own?
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't consider them
Human?
truly alive. I'd
It would
consider
make it a
them
lot
like
easier to
life.
turn the switch off if you believe that.
Yeah.
I am boxing you into a corner, but that's on purpose.
I was considering the are they alive perspective from their impact on humans and the interactions with humans.
Well, I certainly hope you are pro-human.
Yeah. Bomb Skynet. Don't
Yeah, for
defend
sure.
its right to exist.
You know, they Elon and Trump actually talked about that in their conversation.
Hmm.
They talked about someone went after him for being pro-human, and both of them laughed about it. And he was like, "Well, yeah, duh, of course I am." As
Yeah.
opposed to what? Pro what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. It's like
God, I could box you into such a corner with that. If
boxing
I was
me
a
into something.
journalist, well, yeah. If I was a political journalist, I would immediately turn to the question of, okay, if you're considering the other as less than human and willing to be exterminated, would you consider that about other types of people?
That's a different question.
I know.
Yeah. But it's like
To be clear, I know, but there is a philosophizing about morality argument to be had there.
hmm,
It brings up a lot of interesting questions, this AI perspective. Are you, this is a thing that no one's asked in the modern Western world. Are you willing to inflict hurt on the outgroup to protect your in-group?
it's interesting how easily the response to that came.
Yes.
Yes.
It should
Yes.
be, but that is hate speech.
Yeah. It's like I am I willing to protect myself?
Yes.
Yes. Am I
Are
willing
you
to
willing to
protect?
protect my family?
Yes.
Should be.
Am I willing to protect my species? Yes. Do I have compassion for other
How about
species and other
community?
individuals?
How about community?
Yeah, the interesting question is what would lead to the opposite answer?
Well,
Because
yeah, where's the line? Where's the line? Community? Nation? There is a clear line that we're skirting around for obvious reasons. Sure. But when you get a person into a position of agreeing with all of these statements, and then you have this other one that you're not allowed to agree with, it becomes
mm,
very dangerous very quickly. Why is it we're not allowed to agree with that one?
the statement that you would protect yourself against other implies other is something that you need to be protected from and is therefore harmful.
You need some form of evidence. You can't be going out and doing it based on a whim.
Yes, because that's not protection, that is attack.
Yeah, whipping people up into a further to gain your own political power, and then using another outgroup as a scapegoat to attack them for your own
Yes,
political power is not the same thing.
yes.
Cough, cough, Nazis, and cough, cough, Jacinda Ardern. These are not acceptable behaviours. But we also have this narrative of you are never allowed to other the outgroup, says the outgroup who is othering you.
I do not
God,
other them. They
I
other
never want to be a
themselves.
politician.
Yeah,
Agreed. They want to other you, that's for sure. I
yeah,
never want to be a politician. You
yeah.
know, I flirted with that idea so many times in my life, but all of these things I've just said, I wouldn't be allowed to say. You once said this thing that implies this thing. Answer for it.
Mm.
I want to be able to speak freely. No one who ever goes into political positions is allowed to. How insane is that?
What's that? I will
Our
defend the.
political figures
Mm.
are not allowed to speak freely. How fucked are we if that is the case? Which it is. A political figure can't think publicly, they can only speak in declarative statements that are policy positions. How insane is that?
They're not allowed to be wrong in any way.
Never. Never allowed. They must 100% stand behind everything that they say. That is the passing mark for a politician. They don't have to be right. They can 100% stand behind Marxism.
Mm.
Communist fucks. But they cannot ever express doubt. They cannot ever think about things publicly or consider alternative ideas.
Yeah. I'm still on the how you define the other that's worth defending against.
Politics is downstream from culture. Sorry. That's
Yeah.
always sticking in my mind. That's if that is truly that is the case, which means that politicians are not but the mouthpieces for culture, which is the case. They are downstream from culture, which is the case. Which means the true leaders of the Western world, the true leaders of any culture, are the cultural influences.
Not influences in the Instagram sense. Although partially.
Well, yeah, kind of. Those who sway the public consciousness. Specifically, those who sway the political public consciousness.
But they're
Leaders of
downstream of
political shows.
a lot of influences are just amplifiers for memes.
Yes and no. I have a contention there that there is a symbiotic relationship.
Hmm.
They wouldn't be able to be successful unless they were expressing opinions that grip the minds of their audience for obvious
Yeah.
reasons, which makes them sort of beholden to the audience. But also, if they were only doing that, then they would ring as hollow puppets and would not be successful.
Mm.
There's a balancing act there between the true artist who is speaking into existence the ideas that are in the subconscious of his followers, but not the conscious of his followers. Because otherwise he is stale already. There needs to be some form of creativity, of creation in that project. The true leaders of the world are the public intellectuals.
Yeah, we were talking about I guess this is Dawkins versus Peterson.
Didn't
Dawkins
Dawkins come out recently and say that he's a cultural Christian? Or am I confusing him with someone else?
that's ringing a bell, yeah.
I think it might have been him, yeah.
Yeah.
10 years too late, but hey, you got there.
Like there's no difference between religions, but I'm a cultural Christian because I think that's the best one.
Speaking of that, I would like to retract all of the nice things that I've said about Islam in the past.
What brings this on?
A reminder of what they do. They're not our friends.
UK.
First comes Saturday, then comes Sunday. It's a Muslim saying.
Not familiar with it.
First comes the Jews, then the Christians. We may not be their target right now. We have been in the past, and we will be again. It is a militant faith. Explicitly violent. Not friends.
Even if there are peaceful forms of it, it still has that
I could respect
strongly
an
militant
individual
group.
who is peaceful and Muslim.
Mm.
but doesn't mean I respect the institution. I do
Mm.
respect that they have more guts and more backbone than most of the Christian West, but I think that's changing. One. And they have gone too far. Raping and murdering your enemies is unacceptable.
Mm. It's interesting how often that sort of thing comes down to this is wrong. You did that, so I'm against you.
We gotta have lines somewhere.
Oh, I agree. I'm not arguing the line.
I know.
Yeah, rape and murder is wrong. Yes.
Yep.
But so many of ethics is not an abstract science. You can't derive ethics from theory. Ethics
So
is
people still get degrees in philosophy today. Make
yeah,
careers off it.
like, ethics comes from that feeling of this is wrong, and that does drift over time and evolve. But pain bad is pretty fundamental,
Mm.
and pain of my child bad.
Empathy.
You hurt my child, I kill you.
It's not just am I child, it's empathy for the child of others.
Yes, and empathy
Like,
for other individuals and so on. Empathy for extended self.
I have legitimately had this thought and it chilled me to the bone. I was thinking about Muslims and the problems that they're creating and the Jewish people that they were going after. And I actually had the thought pop up in my head of, yeah, but I'm not Jewish. I was like, oh boy, no. No, 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 no. That is an unacceptable position to take.
Mm.
I don't have to worry about my daughters because I'm not that way. It's like, what's the Soviet saying? First they came, I don't remember the specifics, but first they came for them and I said nothing. First they came for that group and then I said nothing. And then they came for me and there was no one left to say anything.
Mm.
Should know that phase. I think I've said that quote on the show before properly.
Mm.
I should know it. Empathy for others, even if they are truly other and not part of your in group, is still an important characteristic of morality and of humanity.
Well, it's like in theory, you're the one you care about the most, although that tends to not play out that way because people tend to devalue themselves. But
Yeah, I don't
it's like
believe
a
that at
bell
all.
curve. What do you mean?
People don't care about themselves, they care about their family.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
people sacrifice themselves for their family. It's a modern thing the idea of caring about yourself most is a modern idea.
Well, yeah, it's hedonism.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's the idea that the ideal human being is someone who spends their entire life on their own doing whatever they want whenever they feel like it. And that everything
Oh,
else is but an imposition on their expression of self
no.
through their
We
actions on a daily basis.
we are fundamentally tool users, right? We pick up a rock, we form a fist. That's a tool. It's a meat hammer. This is a tool.
Mm.
Tool without purpose is useless. And yeah,
We're social creatures before we're tool-wielding creatures. Tool-wielding.
no,
We
but
were
the
in
idea,
tribes before we picked up stones.
yeah, but what I mean is that the idea of we think of tools as things that we pick up and throw away, right? But that same
They're
thought
extensions of the
process.
body.
Yeah, yeah. So
Mm.
you pick up and throw away a tool when it becomes useless, right? What happens if you are useless, right? And what higher calling is there for a tool than to have a use?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm. Why do I need a tool if it has no use?
yeah, yeah.
It's not
So
a tool
then,
if it has no use.
but if you have a tool that is immensely useful, even if the tool is destroyed in the process, like how powerful is a bullet? Right? It's only used once, but it can be pretty damn powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so
Precision.
an individual saying, I can dash myself upon that army but take out several of them that will not rape my children.
Yep.
Right? That's
the history of men right there.
yeah. And yeah, that's why we devalue ourselves.
Society grows great when men plant trees under which shade they will never sit. It's not about us. It never should be. And who cares about us? We focused all on ourselves and the rates of depression went up.
Yeah.
It's laughably absurd. We have this idea that the natural human being is in and of themselves, which is ludicrous. Like,
Oh.
men evolved to care for women in the community. Women evolved to care for themselves and their infants. We're not evolved to be on our own alone in the forest. That's
But
stupid.
even then, a mother sacrificing herself so that her children could live. Like, that's a trope that's definitely a thing. Like, adults, we don't. The highest is not. Like, intrinsically, evolutionarily, the highest is never us,
No.
unless you're sociopathic.
Well,
The highest
the
is the group.
well, that's the
The
reason why the
extension of.
greatest hero myth is the twin sacrifices of the New Testament. No, back to the thing. I'm sure the listeners are sick of me bringing it up, but Christ sacrifices himself to save humanity. That's the story. And Mary sacrifices her only son. These are the twin sacrifices, male and female. The male sacrifices himself to save society, and the female sacrifices her children to save the society.
Yeah,
It's not about them at all.
the image
They
of a
die.
mother giving birth to, caring for, nursing, loving, raising a child, knowing that he will grow up to be a fighter and probably die.
And carrying the broken body of her son, the Assumption of Mary. One of the greatest works of art of all time. Holding his broken body. There's a reason why Christ's image on the cross is everywhere. It's not because some authority structure pushed it everywhere.
With the rejection of the mother role in modern society, like, the closest equivalent to that is, what was it? Love interest going off to fight and die? Like, man meets girl, fall in love, man goes off to fight, girl watches longingly, and now that's been twisted up where the girl's going off to fight too and being more effective at fighting than the guy, and it's like,
Well,
no.
most of the stories have the female cheating on the male when he does so, to demoralize both of them.
Well, that's destructive.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
someone really wants men and women to be at each other's throats at the moment. Like, that for sure is clear. I don't know who's doing it. People will point to all kinds of groups, but boy, that is a goal.
yeah, whether you talk about it as coincidental, as metaphysical, or Illuminati, basically, it's like that is a pattern.
Subconscious. Well,
That is a fatal pattern.
females have gotten freedom in a way that they've never had before. Subconsciously, they are yearning for domination. That's not an argument that can be had.
That needs caveats.
50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Their dollars expresses their wishes.
What's it?
The support of Islam.
The fastest selling book in
The
recent
support
history.
of men being in their spaces. Like, every policy position that the female half of the political spectrum has is men invading their spaces. Violent, aggressive men. That's a yearning
Oh,
Undeniable.
yeet.
Immigration, supportive Islam, supportive trans men in their spaces.
Yes.
Everything.
Oh,
Everything. That they are yearning to be dominated once more. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. It's not men voting for this stuff, ever. It's women. They don't know they're doing it. Fair enough. Well, they search up their domination porn and watch 50 Shades of Grey and all of that. Fastest selling book of all time, like you said, at the exact same time that the West kowtowed to women and they had their biggest political movement ever. Shocking.
well, that's something you're not allowed to think these days.
That's for sure. Well, I don't want to be a politician, ever. I'm about to say these things. Come and get me, motherfuckers.
It's like it needs to include like. Okay, I feel like I have to put into that discussion the speaking from subconscious or trying to. I need to put forward the masculine perspective on that dominance as much as I can haphazardly fumble my way towards some of it. Like it's not control for control's sake. It's
They're not voting for valid dominance.
what?
They are not calling for valid strength and protection.
Which is what men want to give.
Yes, yes. They're
Yeah,
not
that's
asking
that's the
for
thing.
they're not asking for the men of their own nation to step up. They are voting for the psychopathic men of other nations and their own to be given more power over them. What's the male response to that?
I had an image of a guy throwing up his hands and walking away. You don't want me,
That's
fine.
that's a bad image. I don't believe that one.
It's happening.
It is. I don't think that it's going to happen for long.
Yeah. There's a few stages to it. Like when you look beyond that, it's like,
You see,
oh,
I see. You
he
see that as
walks
a potential
away.
partner. You see that because you're a man with potential partner. Imagine you had a daughter.
Yeah. It's like if the woman says go away, I don't want you, then the guy goes, well, if you then, and walks off. If someone he cares about is threatened, machete.
Mm, that's the valid response.
Oh, that was not the response
So
I
what I'm
expected.
saying is, while they may be subconsciously calling for these negative forms of masculine invasion of their spaces, that's a challenge. I'm doing all these things that are dangerous for me. You gonna protect me from myself?
Oh, wait a minute,
You gonna
wait a
take
minute.
control and actually lead, or not?
That's an interesting value arrangement.
Because you
And,
got to
and
remember two things.
yeah,
One, before men gave women all of these freedoms because they voted against it, they were happier. Across the
mhm.
board, statistics says, can't argue with that one. Oh fuck, I've forgotten the second thing. Oh,
So,
yeah, the second thing.
mhm.
Women only have these freedoms as long as men allow it.
Physically, yes, which is I
Which
hate
is
that
everything.
idea, but it's not
But
wrong.
it's reality. Like, the point of this project that we're doing is to say the things that are real but not able to be said.
Mm.
I'm not saying that that's good.
Yeah. Saying a fact
I'm
is
saying
not a
that it
value
is.
judgment on it,
Yeah, what the line from the Old Testament is, "Man will rule over you." Not that he should.
or that he should enjoy it.
No, it's that he will, because it can't be the other way around. It can't. It physically cannot.
Yeah.
And simply for the
MMA,
differences in how hormones affect judgment. It's never gonna go that way.
Yeah. Like any average man versus any average woman. Like guns are a bit of an equalizer, but still. Like
Yeah,
if
but
if
women aren't
you
gonna take up arms about this. You know, the number
oh
one female fantasy is, I don't want to say the word, but non-consensual sex. To be captured.
it's a predisposition towards Stockholm syndrome.
Well, where do you think it came from? All
I
of
don't
human
like this.
history. No, no, this is reality. This is the thing. We want humanity to be some rosy picture that we can paint and talk about to our children. It's not. We're animals. We have instincts, and not all of them are good. And to pretend that we are different than we are, to make political systems based on assumptions about humanity being not as it is to ask for failure. We are what we are. And that's brutish and horrible and not pleasant, and I wish we were different. But
There are realities and there are ideals.
yeah,
The realities we have to acknowledge.
yeah,
The
and we
ideals
can
we aim
have,
for and strive for.
well, we can strive and aim for them all we like, but if the subconscious disagrees, we're never going to get them. Your utopian
Yes. Yeah.
future, your egalitarian vision will not happen if the subconscious perceives it as an increase in weakness.
Mm.
Sorry, women don't dig weakness, and neither do men.
And on the voting men into women's spaces and voting in the psychopaths, it's like a psychopath is
Yeah,
better than a weak man, is the value judgment that's expressing.
the right thing done for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
Like, I, as a woman, want to be protected. I don't give a fuck if the guy protecting me is an absolute psychopath and only doing it for his own intensive purposes. As long as he protects me and murders all the others who are trying to hurt me and take me away, because I don't want to be transferred around, that's fine. It gives me stability. It doesn't care. Right thing done for the wrong
Mm.
reason is still good.
Yeah. There was
Obviously not ideal.
someone talking about Coco von Cheval, whatever the right pronunciation of her name
I
was.
think that's right, but
Yeah. A fashion designer in German occupied France during the Second World War. Apparently, she was slightly easy for the German officers, which is like, army invades. I don't want to be killed. It's like there is a
yeah, war is
what's the
pretty
right way
rough.
to phrase that? Yeah, like you can see the logic there, and it kind of makes sense of
Yep,
she can get some level of protection.
that's mostly how war functions.
Mm,
Trading whatever you can to get whatever you need.
yeah.
It's why people who are psychopathic in nature prefer times of chaos, because
Mm,
it forces other people into states where they can be easily manipulated.
yeah. So I want to like we talked about the way unhealthy dominance appears to be by action being invited by women. Now this is not
Mm,
this is a
subconsciously,
generalization and so on, yeah, and this is a reading of
by
the
unhappy women.
actions. Yeah, yeah, that's an important distinction too. So the healthy thing that I would want, as clumsily as I am, as I am, as well as I can, as clumsy as I am, like dominance should not be imposed.
No,
It should be authority given by the weaker party to the stronger in recognition that they are worthy of it.
I don't know. It has to be given, but it has to be accepted.
I don't want it
Authority
if
can
it's
be
forced.
authority can be taken, but if the person it is taken from does not resent that, then it is given validity.
That's true.
Something
That's
doesn't
true.
necessarily have to be offered on a silver platter, but a
Yeah, yeah.
person
There's
can
a
have something
distinction there.
taken from them and go, "You know what? I respect that."
Mm,
The perception of the one who has had it taken is the important thing. In
yeah.
this example, the subconscious of the women needs to be one of, "This is good." If it is not, if they are resentful and bitter against it, then yes, it's immoral and is wrong.
Mm,
And it's not a thing that you can force.
yeah.
The
And
women need to be accepting.
it's not
You
a
can't
I
force
think
that.
this is best for you. It needs to be
Everyone's got to agree.
a voluntary
Yeah,
acceptance on all sides, right?
yeah, exactly.
I'm not forcing anyone into anything, right? And I feel strongly about that.
Mm.
At the same time, I can see how a position from of strength and authority from which I can act cat behind the curtain.
That my foot.
Ah. um the there's something about a position of power and authority from which I can keep the space for the vulnerable safe. That it's not about being the one to tell the vulnerable what to do or how to be or anything like that. There's an element of don't do this thing, it's dangerous,
Mm.
but it's there is danger behind me with you in front of me, or vice versa, like me between the vulnerable and the danger. There is something about that
Oh,
I'm,
wow.
I'm becoming more comfortable with time. It's been an interesting journey there.
Well, yeah.
Like, that's what
I mean,
that's what
that's
the
what
power's for.
authority is. Valid authority. The only
Mm,
thing is interesting is that if someone in the modern world was to criticize you, what they would say is, "You really think women are vulnerable?" Like, that's what they would come after you after saying that, is like, "You believe that all women are vulnerable and should be protected?"
I open the space. If you want to leave, you are free.
Yes, is the answer. Like, I mean, really, that would be the criticism. You believe that women are less than men and therefore are vulnerable and men aren't? And the real answer is like, you really think women aren't vulnerable? Are you stupid? And secondly, men are vulnerable too. We just don't care. They're expendable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We get shot through the heart just as easily, but we throw
Yeah,
ourselves in the way the bullet to stop them from
yeah,
getting
yeah.
to
Better
you.
us than you. The
Yeah,
reason why
yeah,
we don't send women to war, or didn't, it's just insane
yeah. Like there's
how
an easy
far gone that this sliver of public consciousness has got.
there's an easy criticism that could be leveled at us as in we're living in a peaceful country. We haven't faced those kinds of circumstances, but at the same time, you look at men
I don't think that
in
can be
general.
leveled at us.
Well, in the sense
Do you mean in the tense of us not being willing to sacrifice ourselves?
well,
Is that the idea?
we and most men in the Western world, at least my perception, maybe I'm just too sheltered. Like, haven't had to the modern generation
Hasn't had to
hasn't
face such
experienced.
conflict.
Yes, hasn't had to stand
Okay,
up to defend
fair,
women from
fair, agreed. Do you
that.
think
Yeah,
that they would? You think that the men of our generation would
yeah.
stand up to protect women if, like, invasion happened?
I'm just thinking of that image of a soldier coming back from war, kissing his beloved, who's the famous picture. Like she's bending over backwards as he sweeps her off her feet and so on. kissing her deeply because they came back, and it's like, if that was the reward,
Yeah.
like appreciation and commitment and love,
And femininity
I'd line
itself.
the streets to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Inverse that question. I thought it was funny that you thought the criticism of men would be that, oh, but your country is peaceful and therefore you haven't had to face that. Like, women, how do you feel about this? Oh, we're girl bosses, we're in charge, we can do whatever. All right, let's throw an invading force in. How do you feel now?
Yeah.
Like we all know that women would immediately within 2 seconds go, strong man protect me, please.
Oh, that's a trope. World War III arrives. I'll be in the kitchen, dear.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. All of that feminist shit disappears immediately upon invasion.
Yeah, like there are certainly women who are on the masculine end of the personality scale who would
That's
join
true.
the resistance, right?
Minorities.
Yes, yes, like welcomed and acknowledged, but it's like proportionally, yeah.
Yeah, I'm tired. I think I've said this so many times. I'm tired of making arguments about the exception. Nothing in life is absolute. Everything has its opposite small percentage where that no longer applies, but that's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. If it applies 80 to 90% of the time, it doesn't matter about the other 10.
Take it as a general
Sorry.
rule, deal with people as individuals
Well,
where you can.
we where necessary, but no, because 80% of the time it works. I don't think that society should be optimizing for the cases where it doesn't. You don't
Mm.
optimize for the 1% of things that don't work. That's dumb. You optimize for the solution that fits 99% off the bat.
Get it working for the 99th percentile, and while it's working for the
And
well,
then make small carve outs and exceptions for those that
yeah,
don't. You don't change the rules for the 80 to 99% that work.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want it to work for as many people as possible. So you start with the largest portion, make it work for them, and then you try and include everyone a bit at a time, right?
Yeah, which is why my
Yeah,
intense frustration comes out whenever I make a case and people are like, yes, but for some people that doesn't apply. So, for most it does. Deal with it.
start with most, and then work on everyone. Work on getting there.
Yeah,
But you
because if we change the rule for those who exceed or accept the standard rule, all you end up doing is fucking over the average person who's 80% of the population.
yeah,
Dumb.
that's the key thing that gets lost in it. It's like the idea that you
Who are you optimizing for? The
oh,
majority or the minority? Because someone's going to be unoptimized. It's gonna work well for some and not work well for others. Do you want it to work well for 90% and not work well for 10%? Or do you want it to work well for 10% and not work well for 90? You, which one?
it's the
Everything's a
tarantulas.
trade-off. There is no perfect solution for anything.
It's in what is it? Jordan Peterson's reading of the passage by Friedrich Nietzsche on tarantulas. It's the that vengeance. It's the you had it easiest before in my perception. Therefore, I seek vengeance against you.
Bitterness and resentment is the greatest sin of all. It's where hell comes from.
Yeah,
Brooding on bitterness and resentment.
yeah.
I can rationalize doing anything to you because bad thing was done to me.
It's like that's weakness.
Indulging that is, for sure.
Yes, yeah. Indulging that
In
is weakness.
in yourself or in others. Accepting it might be a better statement.
Don't shy away from acknowledging it, but don't
That's an interesting
tolerate
thought.
it.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I just had a thought that the more compassionate society is the one that allows people to fall off the edge. We pretend that we're the most compassionate society because we optimize for those who fall through the cracks. But we're not at all.
Oh, it's a different rating system.
Abdicating the responsibility of difficult decisions morally does not make you more compassionate. Stating I will not make the hard decision that hurts some small minority does not make you a more compassionate person. Hurting the majority in favor of the minority is not compassion. It's abdication of responsibility. It's cloaking your cowardice in morality.
There's a balance to be struck here. Like, if you have
Naturally,
90%,
you can't go full fascist on that one.
yeah, it's like if you look at the poverty line, say, and children living in abject poverty, that's bad, right? We don't want that. We want to. How many people do you want to pull down a little bit to bring the bottom 0.5% or 0.1% up a lot?
What's the
And there,
cost of your
there is
proposed solution?
there is a certain amount of that that makes sense, like taking 1% off 10 people to lift one person out of abject, I'm going to die from pneumonia poverty, up to I can't afford the fancy toys.
Yeah.
Like, that's a fair trade.
Yeah, like some social safety nets are valuable.
Yeah,
Some social services are valuable, for sure. But you have to remember the trade-off. You cannot have this kind of idea in society that you can do everything for everyone and never have a downside. We want to give money to the poor. Okay,
and
what's the cost of that? What
yeah,
cost? We're just helping underprivileged people.
there are always going to be unforeseen consequences, and there are no final answers, because
Exactly.
there will always be people trying to cheat the system and so on,
The poor will be with us always.
which is a terrible thought in many ways. But it's also reality. Like, you look through history, it's like we haven't figured out a way to get rid of them yet. Oh God, no, that came out terribly. You know what I mean, though. We haven't figured out a way to give everyone happiness.
Well,
We haven't got a
I feel
utopia.
like subconscious had a point there. Some people tried to do that.
Yeah. Some people
Didn't
have
work either.
tried.
Didn't work
If
either.
you, yeah,
The poor will
if
be with us always.
if some heinous tyrant decides to solve that difficulty by merely killing them all, then you're just
Eugenics
left with,
movement.
yeah, that doesn't solve the problem.
No, look, the Pareto distribution.
Yeah,
Sorry, some people are more valuable and skilled than others. And if you let people trade freely without authoritarian intervention, some people will do better than others.
and
You will have
there
some
are
people who fail at everything and end up at zero.
there are always going to be some children in a large enough society who live short, brutish lives of abject, tortured misery. And
Yeah,
that is abhorrent, and we can't prevent it. We
law of
can,
large numbers.
yeah, it's going to happen eventually because there are some terrible people out there. We can fight it, and we
Or
should
just
fight it wherever we
circumstance.
can.
Or just circumstance. It can happen
Yeah,
without anyone's fault.
yeah.
Like, this comes back to that idea we talked about when we discussed the COVID thing of one death is too many. One person suffering is too many.
Hmm.
Like, obviously, we don't want that. Yes, poverty bad. Aren't you
Yeah,
so revolutionary? Waving your flag. Everyone agrees. Problem is, there's a cost to doing everything. You
hmm.
can't just wave a flag and suddenly get rid of child poverty. Sorry. there is always a cost to every action, and nothing can be done perfectly. And
Yeah.
if you optimize for a state of the world that cannot exist, like zero COVID death, you will
Mm.
produce nothing but horror in your attempts to do so. Because you placed it at the highest good, which means everything else comes secondary. And if it's unobtainable, which it is, then everything else comes secondary to achieving an unobtainable goal, and you end up sacrificing all of your society for nothing. For
That's
nothing.
it's ring. What is it?
There's like a power law there.
I went metaphysical on it. So
Okay, I'll
that's
let you go
oh,
first.
it's a force Faust's bargain. Yeah, that would be the right reference to use for it. Um,
I did listen to that play, but I had a hard time understanding
okay.
it.
But the idea being, what is it? You're chasing an unattainable goal, or you see the temptation of an unattainable goal,
Mm,
and you pursue that, and in pursuing it, you lose everything else, and then fail at getting the goal in the end.
yes, because it's unobtainable.
Yeah, it's a demonic bargain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My thought about power law is there's something about raising something to infinity.
Mm.
Oh, didn't we talk about that? We talked about that a while ago about
And you,
anything applied to the power of God becomes hell.
yeah.
Like anything applied to infinity becomes nightmare. The idea of I am chasing a absolute zero death policy of, COVID death or whatever. The sacrifices that you need to make to even get close to that are insane.
Mm.
And if you were to really achieve it, if you wanted really to have a zero death from COVID policy, you just murder everyone. Because it's the only way to even come close. And you'd still fail because someone would get it first.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the paperclip maximizer.
Yeah. Oh, God. Did you ever read Nick Bostrom's book, Super Intelligence?
No.
No, I read that one about 10 years ago when I first started my journey, and it was absolutely terrifying. But yeah, Paperclip Maximizer was one of the arguments.
Yeah. I've started reading The Three Body Problem.
Yeah, Nick Bostrom's book, Super Intelligence, is, I would say, everything you need to know about AI if you want to think about it. And it's quite funny because it's a really old book. So the first 8 chapters are trying to convince people that a AI system can actually be smarter than a person. You just like skip that and get to the what
Mm.
happens next problem.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone's familiar with the paperclip analogy, but do you want to run through
Yeah.
that just in
Yeah.
case they're
Right.
not?
Oh, from my understanding of it, if you had a machine of some sort which received the instruction to make paperclips, like just small things,
An
but
AI machine.
yeah, yeah, an AI machine that can improve itself, right? So in an office, say you had a magic machine and someone gives it an instruction, make paperclips, and then it starts making paperclips. And then it runs out of raw materials and it starts eating some of the things from on the desk and turning them into paper clips. And then it runs out of discs and then it starts eating the walls. And eventually it continues on with that single goal of make paper clips.
Mm,
And then like humans start trying to stop it. Oh, impediments to achieving goal, remove humans with guns, right?
yeah,
And then you have eventually the idea of a fleet of ginormous paperclips crossing the universe, turning everything into more paperclips.
yeah, yeah. The
Very good.
the the way I heard it was, guy asked AI to make paperclips, and AI immediately starts taking over factories all over the planet and producing nothing but paperclips. Consumes all of the resources on the natural earth, and then gets to the point of like, what are paperclips made of? Oh, carbon and hydrogen and something. It's like, oh, guess what? Human beings are made of that too. Let's breed a whole bunch of them and put them in meat grinders to make paperclips out of. And then it starts, like you say, expanding into the universe, hitting every single planet with nanotechnology, dissolving them all and turning them all into piles of paperclips.
Yeah.
A single goal raised to infinity becomes hell because you can't have a single goal without taking into account other ones.
Mm.
Things need to be in context. It's like the idea of you have a robot in your house and you ask it to make coffee. So on the way to make coffee, it just like steps on the child on the floor. Like it doesn't care about the child. It's just in the way. I'm
Yeah.
here to make coffee. Squish.
It's the magic porridge pot.
Don't know that one.
Oh, children's story. Somehow I forget the details of it. There's a magic porridge pot, and you sing the magic words to it, and it fills up with porridge. And then you say the magic stop words, and it stops. And then girls away at market or something, and her mum remembers the magic start words, so she says them, and it starts making porridge. And she doesn't remember the magic stop words. So by the time the girls come back from market, the village is flooded in porridge.
And everyone drowns from porridge.
No, she gets in and stops the porridge, and then they all eat lots of porridge because children's story. But yeah,
Yes, but well, I don't know. I mean, I've got Grimm's Tales on the shelf over here, and
it's
they generally
true.
don't have great endings.
Yeah, yeah. What was it? Scalding hot porridge flooding through the entire town.
Now,
That's like the Great Molasses Explosion. A tank of molasses
yeah.
became pressurized and took out
Oh,
a large tank, like 2 stories high, a tank of molasses became pressurized on a hot day and exploded and demolished like a city block.
oh God.
Give
Growing up
it
on that
some
would
name
be a
like the
nightmare.
Molasses Apocalypse or something.
It's a big world. Everything's happened somewhere. One of my
Yep.
favorite ones was the clips of the Mentos truck and the Coca-Cola container colliding. It was just foam on the highway. It was great.
Uh, yeah, yeah. Laura Dodge numbers. Everything happens somewhere. Uh,
Yeah, that's something that human beings really haven't come into grips with, haven't
mm,
accepted. We treat every individual circumstance of suffering as a tragedy,
mm,
and we don't think about the statistics of things. You know, like everyone's scared of flying and not driving.
yeah,
Stupid. Just absolutely off the face of it.
yeah. Or sharks versus oh, yeah, yeah. There's so many things we do every day. Like, was it
Yeah.
the number one cause of hand injuries uh, for ACC, like government funded medical assistance in New Zealand, is removing avocado stones? Knife, avocado.
Ow.
Psst.
I was like the people freaking out about gun violence in the States, and like more people die from peanuts. Were
Yeah,
you going to ban peanuts? Sorry. This is like stupid. It's really stupid. And we have so many examples of that.
yeah.
It's
It's like, yes, death and suffering is bad. Yes, work to reduce it, but don't blow it out of proportion.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
keep,
What's the cost
yeah.
of
Like,
doing this? We
if you
want zero
could,
people to die on the roads. Like, cool, no one's driving anymore.
it's yeah.
What's the cost of that?
It's like the correlation between excessively clean environments and allergies. Like, you stop kids
Yeah,
eating dirt, and now they die if
yeah,
they eat
yeah.
a peanut.
Yeah. Vacuum cleaners and dishwashers and washing machines increase the rates of asthmatic and allergies because the environment's too clean.
Oh, yeah, yeah. There's always a cost, and like, yes, they had massive positive effects in so many ways for quality of life, ease of washing clothes, and reduction of transmission of many illnesses. But don't pretend it's without cost.
Do you think we'll ever be able to change the incentives of governance to be towards actually solving problems? Or do you think we'll always be doomed
I think the
to
best
having
we'll
a
do.
system of governance that don't even remotely address the issues?
I think for times, I think it's cyclical. Not for the rest of the civilization, because of unless we get sufficiently visionary leaders, like the cycle of civilization stuff that we've talked about before. It's like on the upslope, yeah, they go up because they're good at solving the problems they've got. They go down because they stop being good enough at the problems that are facing them.
I don't know if I disagree, but I don't want to believe it.
Mm.
Like,
But luckily, yeah,
if you're right, and that's true, and a part of me does believe that, then throw my hands up in the air. Borderline determinist, nothing matters, give up immediately. Not really up for that.
I'm not far off that on the large scale, but I'm
Yeah.
heavily motivated on the scale I can reach.
Why? Temporary minimization of suffering?
I'm temporary. What's wrong with
Fair.
my effect being temporary?
What's wrong with temporary? No, fair, fair. I respect
Yeah,
that.
like we,
You think too big and everything
as a,
becomes meaningless.
yeah, we are not alone. We are accepting a torch of responsibility from those who came before to make things better in the now, and we pass that torch to the future to make things better in the future. We do what we can now to prepare things for those in the future, but it's a passing of the torch. It's
Mm.
a brotherhood. Is that a good way to think about it?
You're hinting on fraternity, the idea of transmission culture being a part of something great.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, like the
Yeah.
idea
Hard
of
to hard to pin down though, I'll give you that.
mm, yeah. But we don't need to worry making coming up with that right system. We don't need to worry about making
Well,
fixing everything.
there is no the right system.
Exactly. But even so, it's like the idea of even if there was, like we're not going to do it in our lifetimes. What we can worry about is making this better, doing what we can here while thinking about tomorrow. But it's a stoic attitude, I guess, of I can change this. I'll worry about this. I can't change that. So I
I
won't
think
worry about
it's interesting that you go to stoicism. My brain goes to deferring authority. Tower of Babel. Don't reach to a place that you cannot hold.
it. Mm. It's interesting, like Jordan Peterson's talk about or common thing that he's known for, the clean up your room, right? The idea
Mm.
that by improving this, you can become enough to improve that, and then that, right? And if you're only just managing here and just keeping on with the daily grind, it's like these are the progress from starting to put your life in order to being able to make a difference to those around you. If you're looking for when you can change the world, like it looks like you're not making any progress. And you won't make any progress towards changing the world, changing your country, changing your city, or even your family for years. Quite possibly. Like every situation is different, but
Yeah, it depends on how dire your situation is. The more dire it is, the less action needed to have a great impact. You clean
Yeah,
your room in a dirty house, you discover all kinds of things immediately, and all kinds of fights start. And if you don't back down from them, then all of a sudden a potential for change occurs.
yeah. And not backing down doesn't mean going in for swinging. That means just holding your ground, saying, "Yes,
Mhm.
I will tidy
Standing
my
by
room."
what you're doing, yeah.
Yeah, and adjusting course is needed and reevaluating, but it's like sail your course.
Yeah,
Change your
there's
course
actually,
as you think is right. But
speaking of that, there's something that we thought about recently, my wife and I, about her
Mhm.
father. He didn't support us when we first got together. Didn't support the wedding, didn't support the marriage. Some kind of story about believing in long courtship and respecting the institution of marriage because we had got engaged and got married very quickly, um, which is a joke because he fathered her by having an affair with a married woman. So doesn't really respect it that much. Anyway, for a long time, we sort of believed that he didn't respect me. Thought I was bad, thought I wasn't good enough, that kind of thing that you would expect from a father who's looking out for his daughter. Recently, we've started to think the opposite. That attitude of, analogy being, you live in a dirty house as a child, and one day you clean your room, and the rest of the family comes to you and says, why do you think that you're better than us, that you would clean your room? Are you judging us for being messy? A comment of, what makes you think you're better enough to make this effort? The problem, we believe now, wasn't that I wasn't good enough, but that I was. And that casts judgment upon him.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Which would make sense too, because her mother supported us.
and mother would be more likely to see the flaws. One would think more sensitive to it.
Maybe.
Hmm.
More likely to prefer that things were better in her circumstance, at least, and wish better for her child.
Hmm.
Be able to relate to her more, perhaps.
Hmm. Yeah. It's like,
You're a bit of a hostile relationship with them at the moment.
hmm.
Unfortunately. We've just found out that we're pregnant with another kid. And their side of the family, her parents, are um, unresponsive. Like, we literally sent them a message being like, hey, this has happened. And we got an okay back and haven't heard anything since. Spent their
Oh.
whole life saying the, equivalent of don't have kids, they're expensive to their child.
Hmm.
Like, the cost of money is more important than children. If only we didn't have you, we would have more money because that's more valuable to us.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to have a conversation along those lines with my son recently. Um, he
Uh,
it'll make sense in a minute.
okay, yeah, sorry.
He had swimming lessons through school, so I pay for swimming lessons for him once a week after school, but once a week every term they have swimming every day in school, and he had that, and he'd been asking me to come along to basically watch and help him get dressed. It's like he didn't really need me, but he wanted me there, and so I arranged to come along to one of them. And he said, "Why do you care more about money than coming to help me at swimming?"
Oh, good boy.
So I stopped what I was doing and went and sat down with him, and it tried to explain basically that I would be there whenever he needed me, but he wouldn't always need me when he wanted me. And I would try to be there when I could when he wanted me too as well, some of the time, but there are people relying on me at work, and
The long-term vision.
yeah, I
Like,
tried to flesh it out, and I don't
it's a
think,
hard conversation to have. Like, you could
yeah,
explain that very well to an adult, sure, but to explain it to someone of his age would be very difficult.
yeah,
Like
and I
like
don't,
if I was always there for you, you would feel that I would always need to be,
mm,
is another problem of like, okay, I could be, but then you would never feel like you could do it on your own because I was always there.
yeah, and I think I tried to explain about oh, him needing to develop his own strength or something along those lines. Like,
Mm,
instead of me always being there for him, I want him to grow up to be able to do lots of things. And if I'm always doing them for him, then he won't learn how to do them. This might have been a different conversation getting mixed in my head, but I don't think he
that would
understood it
apply.
completely. But
Part of
yeah,
him would,
yeah, and
you know,
and the
they
I
won't
think the
always get it
message,
in a single conversation,
mm,
but you
yeah,
have enough of them with a child over time, and they sort of get the pattern without
yeah,
really getting it, but they feel it, they implicitly understand.
mm,
Yeah,
yeah, and
and that
the
a long term as well of like, okay, sure, yes, in this moment I am choosing to earn more money than rather be here, but
mm,
also, what is that money going towards? Do we go and do this thing and that thing and that thing when you want with the money that I earned?
mm,
Like, okay, I'm not here for you this second, but because I spent that hour here, maybe we get 3 hours of spending time with you later on that's amplified because we have money to go and get ice cream or go to the park or da 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 da.
yeah, yeah, and
Nothing's ever that simple.
yeah, and I hope that he could at least feel the pattern of he had an honest concern and
Mm,
asked me a deep question, and I stopped what I was doing, went and sat beside him, and told him I loved him and so on, and like, you had something important, so I came and gave you my attention, and
that's the most important thing and the thing that most people miss.
mm,
Like, I honestly believe that that's what makes you and me different from most people, is that we had a parent or parental figure, mine wasn't a parent,
mm,
who did that for us as a kid.
mm,
Those kinds of questions would actually be answered
yeah.
or
There's
encouraged
been
even.
there's been some stuff happening recently with my brother that's, oh, I've had a few talks with my dad about it because dad's been second guessing himself to a degree, because it seems like I was the one who asked the questions, and I was the sort of squeaky wheel in an emotional sense,
Mm.
where my brother wasn't squeaky, is the best sort of deliberately vague analogy I can bring up.
And therefore didn't have the attention,
Yeah,
did
yeah,
he?
like he turns to computer games instead, it seems. And this
Think
is,
I'd get along well with him?
yeah, this is half understood, and me trying to figure it out, and
Escape
he's,
somewhere.
yeah, he's working through his own things, and I went a different way in me dealing with my issues, and yeah, life's complicated. But like with my son, I come back to, when I come to school to pick him up, he charges out of the classroom, crashes into me, and gives me a big hug that lasts like 10 seconds of solid hug. And everyone says he's doing well. Like, his teachers, parent teacher meeting, no concerns. Like, he's great. My parents, like, people who, like, everyone's like, he's doing great. There's the odd sort of comment that I've had from friends like, you might be letting him get away with a bit too much.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. But in all fairness, most people err on the other side of that spectrum, and I think you're probably better to err on your side.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did sort of solidify the boundaries a little bit more, gradually, after a few different people made that comment.
Mm.
And Like there were no big blow ups. It's like, yeah, I'm really lucky to have him. He's a great kid.
Mm. And take as much credit for that as you please.
Oh, I hesitate to do that, but I don't really have anywhere else to put it.
The idea that children are who they are and would be the greatest that they could possibly be if they were only allowed to flourish without intervention is insanity.
Oh, I'm not saying that. I'm just a lot of
Oh,
how he's developed is due to good parenting. He's an easy kid to parent. There are kids that are really hard to parent, and there are
like,
circumstances that can make it much
okay,
more difficult.
yeah. I wanted to say I feel like that's a bit of a feedback loop, but also disagreeability, disagreeableness sort
Mm,
of chimes in immediately of like, oh yeah, that's not that cut and dry. Some kids are actually harder,
yeah,
but
and
it's
there's
sort of a meeting of both, really.
yeah, and there's conditions that are out of your control, like availability of other family members to help out, and school
Yeah, we got no
environment,
one.
social, and so on. Yeah,
I
so
mean, that's what I
I
get for moving like halfway to Antarctica. Though, my fault.
yeah, but yeah, I count my blessings.
As we all should.
Yeah.
Small victories where we can make them. You know, we can always imagine our lives to be better and things to be more how we would wish them.
Mm.
But man, we could always imagine them worse too. We got to take what we have and be thankful for it.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like the only change I think I would make to my life as it stands now. Even uh, yeah, the only change would be a loving partner
Mm,
to do all this with, and
pretty great.
yeah, there's a lot of knock-on effects of that potential, and I'm working on it, but no success yet. But yeah,
It's a struggle. Although,
yeah,
you know, like we said before, no solutions, only trade-offs. It's been an incredible amount of work. I suppose my wife is a unique case though for that.
mm,
But God, it's amazing.
mm,
Having done the work and having that be in the past now,
yeah,
beautiful. Oh, I love it. When I was in that stage, as I'm sure you are well aware from your previous relationship, not so great. But now I'm pretty damn happy. And hopefully, when you do find your person, you can sort of skip a majority of that. Just
yeah,
work on the
yeah,
details at the end because, you know, you're looking at someone who's already an adult,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. Like,
hopefully been functioning as an adult for 10 years, not
oh,
pretending or hiding away.
yeah. Tomorrow is my 31st birthday, and the precise
Ah,
date this is recorded on won't be known in public. So yeah,
happy
but yeah.
birthday.
So
But
thank you.
I almost said the thing, but no. Happy
Yeah,
birthday tomorrow. That's still strikes me. So what, you're 5 years older than me, I think?
I think so.
I don't
31.
know how old I'm turning this year. That's my hesitation.
Ah,
26, 27, one or the other. Do the math, but I'm lazy.
yeah. But
27? I think. Yeah, I'm 97, so 27. So
it's like I always like I've had
four.
more success dating in the last year than in the rest of my life combined, which is not saying much. I've had two dates
Doesn't
that
shock
looked
me.
like they'd go somewhere.
Yeah, but you know that thing about male value over time.
Yeah, and sort of working on myself and working on bringing out
Mm,
the evident value, if that makes sense. Like there was an analogy I
genuine.
saw.
Like
Yeah.
most people fake it, and you can bring out what is actually there.
Oh, I don't know how to fake it, but there was
I
an
think that's
analogy.
probably able to be detected. which
Yeah.
is good.
There was a description of like, good guy versus bad boy. Put them
Mm.
on two axes of a graph instead of one axis. Oh, good guy is caring, considerate, earns some money. Bad boy, strong, protective, and like Prince Charming is the peak of both of them. Like
It,
the nice and
it's
charming
what's
are. Sorry.
strength versus morality.
In some ways, I guess, yeah. It's like
Yeah,
the Prince Charming in this analogy was laid out as the ideal at the peak of both of them, sort of the top corner of the graph.
and it's high
And
math, isn't it?
sorry,
High math, isn't it?
yeah, that YouTube channel.
Never be free of that fucking thing.
Yeah, but something struck me about the idea of Prince Charming. So princess is in the castle guarded by a dragon. Prince Charming comes along, slays the dragon, gets the girl. It's like he's not some wimpy guy. It's like
No,
how
he just
dangerous.
killed a dragon.
Exactly. He's more dangerous than an effing fire-breathing dragon.
Hmm.
And he's
They're always
there
quiet
in.
too.
Sorry?
When you think of wimpy nice guy, they always talk too much.
Mm,
No, the Prince Charming is never a loquacious individual. Calm, withdrawn, mysterious almost.
mm. Yeah. In the attire of battle and war, the shining armor.
Yes, still gleaming.
Oh, been through
There's
war
there,
but untouched by it.
there's a little hint of an element of play. The idea of being able to be in a sporting attire with a sporting smile in horrible circumstances.
Mm,
Not in a maniacal way, but in a I can handle this and confident enough that I can do it so in a playful manner.
yeah. And there'd be subtleties to suit the taste of different women, like how rough he
Well,
looks out of it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
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 it's
for
like
sure, yeah.
the
But those
idea
things
of
are secondary, superficial.
the idea of a strong, dangerous, moral man.
Yeah, I mean to make the comment about the preferences coming second, I mean, I'm an amazing example of that.
Yeah.
Like I'm 5'0". That came second to the strong morality.
Mm,
The archetype came first. Appearances was definitely secondary.
mm. Yeah, and it's interesting to me because the girlfriend I had for a month, several months ago, she did make a comment that I was a good guy, right? And like a morally good person,
Mm,
right? And I've had, I'm, I'm confident enough in that assessment. Like she's not the only source of that. Like I've put enough thought in myself that I'm confident confident that I'm reasonably high on that axis of the graph to use that analogy. And I just need to
mm.
work on the other one. And I think that evidence seems to show I'm making strides in that direction. So
I'd agree with that.
yeah, I'm
Like
feeling quietly confident.
6 months ago, before you had this whole thing with this girl and started embarking on this journey, you were so different.
This stage of
And
it, there's been a hell of a lot of groundwork.
fair. Yeah, everything may have culminated in the last 6 months, but you're right, there's been a lot of work before that. I wonder if how you would feel if you went back and watched one of our earlier conversations to see your
I should do
posture, the
that.
way you
Yeah.
stand, the way you talk, because boy, is it different.
Oh,
Like, I mean, my wife
yeah.
and I have both made comments on about this, and she's made comments about it. Being a woman, obviously, they would be more valid.
Yep.
But previously, oh, we've talked about it before. Previously, your words were not to be taken seriously in a lot of
Mm,
ways, sort of like a little mouse. And then at some point, the last 6 months or so, both of us noticed of like, oh, that's not the case anymore.
mm.
There's there's weight, there's aggression and violence in the words,
Yeah, like there was an
something
interesting
backing them up.
there was an interesting situation at work recently that what was it? I'm into amateur radio and I get enthusiastic about the hobbies, and one of the guys had some questions about a few technical aspects. I was like, right, trying to explain this, and the joker of the group kept butting in, trying to make jokes while I was trying to explain these things to someone who was interested in it. And it wasn't like everyone else was joining in and laughing. Like, there's a lot of humor in the conversations that go around there, but he was butting into something I was trying to explain, and it wasn't being reciprocated anywhere. So I was like, please shut up, with a bit more of a sort of nuanced explanation than like that. Humor's great, and it's often funny. But at the moment, I'm trying to explain something complicated, so please shut up. And he did.
There's a position of superseding authority that you can have in that kind of context.
Hmm.
Like, imagine your average person would just yell at him, "Shut up." You just laugh even more because that person has demeaned themselves as beneath him and given him validation that his points are annoying and bugging him.
Hmm.
But if you dismantle him in an intellectual fashion, all of a sudden he feels like the fool he's betraying.
Yeah.
There's a sense of authority.
It probably helps that this guy is a good guy with good intentions, and if he recognizes that he's screwed up in some way, he will
Mm.
sort of work to improve himself.
Oh yeah, I can
And yeah.
imagine that your entire workplace is an eclectic group of people with some social communication problems. I doubt very few of the people who work there are like very fluent social creatures.
Little bit. Like, we're not all autistic, but there's definitely a bit of a strain there.
Oh, it's not
No,
100 or 0.
yeah, yeah. Like,
Yeah,
there's definitely one of
a
the guys I
tendency.
know has
How about a
diagnosed
tendency?
ADHD, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's definitely a
I'm still
tendency there.
avoiding diagnosing myself of anything, but I feel like it's going to be inevitable.
Yeah,
That's something to bring up next time. We are running a bit long, so I should probably call it. But
yeah.
there was I noticed as a teaser, I noticed a part of my being that yearned for some form of disability diagnosis,
Mm,
and it associated that with an interest of the Western individual to seek validation through victimhood.
mm,
That there's something there of the youth wants to have a label of brokenness, psychological dysfunction, physical dysfunction, if only to prove themselves as unique or to gain some form of sympathy or footing or status, even as being disabled.
mm.
Not sure where, but I've noticed that as a tendency, and I get the strong feeling that that's a thing that lots of people have, hence why they seek diagnoses. Diagnosi? Something.
Diagnoses, I think. Yeah.
That sounds right.
It depends if its root is Latin or Greek, I believe. And I don't
I'm
know
just
which
having
is
fun.
which.
I don't care.
Yeah. Uh, Good
I am
conversation.
dyslexic, so I can make fun of words all I like.
Oh yeah, yeah. Uh,
Haven't had that officially diagnosed either, at least as not as I'm aware. Regardless, we should probably say goodnight to everyone.
yeah.
Are we? 2:14.
Good night.
Good night. I'll see you all next time.
Yep.